Story 1, the man who lived in our house for 3 weeks. I'm 22 now, but this happened when I was 16, and it still feels like a bruise on the inside of my memory, something that no one can see, but I can't stop touching. I've told this story maybe 3 times in my life, and every time, there's someone who laughs, or says, "No way," or "Why would he stay there that long," as if a predator is supposed to follow movie logic. So I'm writing it here because maybe strangers on the internet will believe me the way people in my real life didn't. I lived with my mom and my little brother, Ryan, who was 7 at the time. Dad wasn't in the picture. We lived in a 2-story house in a quiet suburb, one of those places where people leave bikes on the lawn and nothing ever seems dangerous. The kind of place where you sleep with the window cracked open because the air smells like cut grass and you don't think anything bad can get in. But something did. Something had already been inside for weeks before I noticed. The first thing that really happened wasn't big. Just weird. I remember walking into the kitchen one morning before school and seeing the fridge door slightly open. Not wide open, just enough that the little suction seal didn't catch. I thought maybe Mom had been half asleep packing lunches and forgot to close it. No big deal. Then a few days later, it was the pantry door. Then another time, the basement light was on when none of us had gone down there. It felt like the house was breathing differently. Like doors weren't where we left them. The thing is, you rationalize. You always rationalize in the beginning. You're not trained to jump to, "There is a stranger secretly living inside our house," even when you should. It really escalated the night I heard footsteps. Not normal footsteps, slow, deliberate, like someone walking heel-to-toe to avoid making noise. I was in my room, upstairs, trying to finish math homework, and it sounded like someone was moving around in the hallway. What made it worse was that Mom was working a night shift, and Ryan was asleep with his door closed. I literally froze in my chair. I remember holding my breath so hard my lungs burned. I waited, listening, counting each creak of the floorboards. I ended up convincing myself it was the house settling or maybe the cat next door outside. I told myself anything except the truth. I went to bed with my lamp on. The next day, my bowl from the night before, the one I left in the sink, was washed and put away in the wrong cabinet. That's when the first real spike of fear hit. Not panic yet. Just that stomach drop realization, someone touched something that should not have been touched. And then I did what every woman is trained to do socially, I gaslit myself. Maybe I washed it and forgot. Maybe Mom moved it. But it kept happening. Bread went missing. Crackers. Cheese slices. Things you'd barely notice, just enough to stay alive. The worst part? He was smart. He didn't take obvious things. He didn't make dramatic messes. He lived around us, not with us. Like a parasite that learns your body so it can keep feeding without killing the host. About 2 weeks in, Ryan started having nightmares. He said a shadow man was watching him at night. I thought it was just kid stuff until he said something specific that made my skin crawl. His hair is stringy like it's wet. Not like a monster. Not like a ghost. Like it's wet. Like it was real. Still, what did I do? I hugged him, said it wasn't real, tucked him in tighter. I wish I had listened. The night everything snapped, I was alone with Ryan again. Mom was doing overtime, wouldn't be home until 2 a.m. I was downstairs watching TV, trying to ignore that feeling that someone was watching us, like the air in the house had weight. Around 10 p.m., I paused the show because I heard something upstairs. Not footsteps this time, more like a door hinge. The slow kind that squeaks because it hasn't been oiled. The kind of sound that tells you someone isn't supposed to be moving that door. My mouth went dry so fast I couldn't swallow. I muted the TV. I listened. At first, nothing. Just silence that felt like it had teeth. Then, a long exhale. Not mine. Not Ryan's. That was it. Logic died right there. Instinct took over. I ran upstairs, grabbed Ryan out of bed. He was half asleep, confused, and I bolted us both into my room. I locked the door, grabbed my phone with shaking hands, and called 911. While I was on the phone, I heard something I will never forget. Soft, barefoot steps coming down the hallway toward my room. Then a gentle pressure on my doorknob. Not trying to break it. Just testing. As if to say, you know I'm here now. I screamed at the dispatcher. I don't remember what I said. Just remember the sound of my own voice cracking with something primal. The footsteps went quiet. Then there was nothing. Police came in under 4 minutes. It felt like 4 hours. They swept the house. Not just the rooms, attic, basement, crawl spaces. And for a while, it looked like maybe I had imagined everything. I could tell one of the officers was already thinking, hysterical teenage girl. Then they opened the basement vent. There was a panel in the wall, an old access point to the HVAC system. Behind it was a space no one ever used, big enough for a person to crawl into. And inside it were a thin, piss-stained blanket, food wrappers, a water bottle, empty yogurt cups, my missing cereal spoon, and a rusted kitchen knife. The officer who found it swore quietly under his breath, like he had seen bad things, but this still got to him. They checked the basement door. He had jimmied the lock weeks ago and never relocked it. He'd been coming and going under our feet the entire time. He had been living in our house for a minimum of 19 days. Eating our food. Watching us sleep. Standing in Ryan's doorway at night. Walking past my room while I showered. Listening to everything. The scariest detail? He hadn't broken in that night. He was already inside when we locked the doors. They never found him that night. He slipped out before police arrived. They got fingerprints, but he wasn't in the system. The detective's best guess? Homeless, unstable, probably escalating. We moved within 2 weeks. Now the aftermath. Here's the stuff movies don't show. I didn't sleep without a chair propped against my door for 2 years. Ryan still can't sleep unless there's a night light and the closet door is shut. Mom triple checks every window, every lock, every night. I developed the habit of clearing every room when I come home, bathroom, closet, under bed, behind shower curtain. I still do it, even in apartments. I can't stand the sound of slow footsteps on hardwood. It makes my whole body lock up. Every time something in my house isn't where I left it, I don't think, oops. I think, again. You don't just move on from the idea that someone lived inches away from you, silently. That he watched you brush your teeth. Change clothes. Sleep. Breathe. Dream. Paranoia becomes a survival instinct you never shut off. I still think about the nights I slept with one leg outside the blanket, or when I left my window open, or the time I sang Taylor Swift out loud in my room, while he might have been listening from behind a vent. I think about the day I cried about a breakup in the kitchen, not knowing a stranger was hidden just feet below me, breathing in the dark. And I think about the fact that if I hadn't heard that one exhale outside my door, if I had brushed it off like all the other signs, we might not have walked out of that house alive. So yeah. To the man who lived in our house for 3 weeks, stole our food, watched me sleep, and tested my door handle while I was on the phone with 911. Let's not meet. Ever. Story 2, the Airbnb with the rope chair. I was 19 the year I decided I was finally going to live like a normal person again. Which, in my case, meant forcing myself to do things that most people don't even think twice about, like booking a solo trip. If you read my first story, you already know why that mattered. When I was 16, a man secretly lived in our house for 3 weeks. Since then, I've checked locks the way some people check Instagram. I don't sleep with both earbuds in. I sit facing the door in restaurants. My brain is one long emergency drill. But I thought traveling might fix me a little. I had saved up, finally got my first passport, and planned a short trip to France before college really took over my life. I didn't want to stay in a hotel, too expensive, and I couldn't do a hostel, too many strangers in one room, so I chose an Airbnb with great reviews. Private room, friendly older host, loves meeting travelers, etc. It had 5 stars, pages of praise, and a very normal-looking house in the photos. I thought I was being cautious. I was wrong. The host's name was Mark. Late 40s or early 50s, kind of disheveled in that artist who forgets to eat way. He seemed harmless enough at first, too talkative, but not creepy. I kept reminding myself, you are paranoid. This is normal human interaction. Stop expecting danger. The first red flag was the door. The bedroom I was staying in had 2 doors, not one. The first led to the hallway, and the second led somewhere else. When I asked about it, he laughed it off. Oh, that just connects to my office. It stays locked. He said it casually, like it was no big deal. But something about the way he didn't look at me when he said it stuck with me. I wish I had listened harder to that moment. Because that door was the reason I almost never came home. The first night was normal. Jet lag knocked me out. The second night was the first time I heard it. A soft rattle at the connecting door. Like someone trying the handle. Not aggressively, just testing. I sat up in bed instantly. Every nerve in my body remembered being 16 again. I stared at the door and waited. Nothing. I told myself maybe the house shifted, maybe the lock was loose. People in reviews said he was respectful. I shoved a chair against the doorknob and forced myself to sleep. The next morning, I looked closer at the door. There was no lock on my side. Only on his. That was red flag number 2. Red flag number 3 was the chair. It was in the corner of the room, an old wooden chair with thick armrests. I didn't think about it until I saw the 2 loops of rope tied to each armrest. Not messy knots. Not random string. Tied with purpose. Like restraints. I stared at it for a full minute before my brain allowed my mouth to say, out loud, in English and to no one, "That's not normal." I took a photo of it. Not because I thought I'd need proof, but because I needed to convince myself I wasn't imagining it. When I went downstairs later, I told him I'd be leaving for a cafe to do some work, and I noticed his tone shift, almost like he wanted to know exactly when I'd be back. "What time? You'll return for dinner?" "Yes." That was the moment I texted my brother. "If I go missing, I'm at this Airbnb. Save this address." Not joking. He texted back laughing emojis. I didn't laugh. That night was when everything tipped. I had gone upstairs early, pretended to be tired. I locked the hallway door, pushed the chair back against the other one again, and put my suitcase in front of it, too. Around 1 a.m., I heard faint footsteps downstairs. Not pacing. Not walking. Waiting. The house was silent. No cars outside. No TV. No talking. Just someone awake in the house with me. I reached for my phone. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. Then, very slowly, like a scene from a horror movie happening in real life, the handle on the connecting door turned. Not loudly. Not violently. Just confidently. Because he already knew the lock was only on his side. My heart was beating so hard I thought I'd pass out. I held my breath, praying the chair and suitcase would hold. Then I heard him whisper something. Too faint to fully catch, but I swear it sounded like, "Just checking." That broke whatever paralysis I was in. I texted my brother. "Come get me now. I'm not safe. Call me when you're outside." I didn't pack. I didn't grab toiletries. I just stood there with my backpack on, shoes already on my feet, waiting for the sound of a car. It took my brother 34 minutes to get there. For 34 minutes, I watched the shadow of feet under the door crack. He stood there. Just breathing. Listening. Not trying to talk. Not walking away. Just waiting. When I heard my brother's voice call my name outside, I didn't even unlock the door. I opened the hallway window, crawled out onto the awning, and jumped to the ground. I left the suitcase, the clothes, the chargers, everything. We didn't speak until the car was moving. The last thing I saw in the rearview mirror was Mark standing at the upstairs window, watching us leave. Expressionless. Like nothing unusual had happened. We went to the police the next morning. They sent officers to check the house. What they found? The connecting door was unlocked from his side. The rope chair had been moved slightly. There was a box of zip ties in the closet of the same room. And this part makes me sick. There was a camera lens hole drilled into the wall behind a coat rack, pointing at the bed. He didn't deny it. He said, word for word, "I just like knowing who's in my home." Some guests are very interesting. But because I escaped before anything happened, they couldn't charge him with more than invasion of privacy plus attempted unlawful entry. An Airbnb? They removed his listing. That's it. He's still out there. Now the aftermath. I can't stay anywhere without checking walls for hidden doors. I move furniture in every hotel room. I sleep with a doorstop alarm and a belt around the doorknob. I don't book Airbnbs anymore. Ever. I don't stay in houses I didn't personally lock myself. I don't wait and see when something feels wrong. People say, trust your gut, but they forget the second part. Your body notices danger before your brain gives you permission to believe it. And to Mark, the Airbnb host with the rope chair, the silent door handle, and the camera hole behind the coat rack. Let's not meet. Ever. Story 3, The Woman in the Vents. I moved into that apartment mostly because it was cheap. That's always how these stories start, right? Cheap rent, decent location, a landlord who acts like he's doing you a favor by letting you live there. I just finished dealing with the Airbnb incident from story 2, therapy, panic attacks, the whole, maybe I'll never sleep normally again, arc, so I wanted a place where I could reset and isolate for a while. The apartment wasn't great, but it wasn't horrible either. A one-bedroom on the top floor of an older building, the kind that used to be a house before someone got tax benefits by chopping it into units. The walls were thin, the windows rattled, and the vents made this faint humming noise when the heat kicked on. But it was mine. No host, no surprise basement doors, no rope chairs. Just a place I could lock and double lock and triple check at night. The first night I slept there, I heard what I assumed was the neighbor below me watching TV. Except the noise wasn't coming from the floor, it was coming from the vent near the ceiling. A dull tapping. Then, like a dragging noise. Then silence. I told myself it was pipes. Or a raccoon. Or that I was still mentally wired from past trauma. I had a big habit of talking myself out of fear back then. It's nothing, don't be dramatic, you're safe, the same internal monologue I've been forcing since I was 16. The next night, I heard it again. Not loud. Not constant. Just deliberate. Like someone shifting their weight. Like fabric brushing metal. Like breathing. I turned the TV up and ignored it. That became my coping strategy. If I could drown it out, I didn't have to deal with it. But it didn't stop. In fact, it started happening at the same time every night, around 2:20 to 2:30 a.m. That was the first red flag. The second was when things started disappearing. At first it was small, a protein bar I was sure I hadn't eaten, a water bottle missing, a fork gone. Stuff you could blame on forgetfulness, except I wasn't careless with food. I counted everything, labeled everything, and always locked my door, paranoia habits from story 2. Then one morning I opened the fridge and the seal on one of my meal prep containers was broken. The food inside wasn't gone, but someone had lifted the lid and put it back. That was when I started sleeping with the lights on again. And that was when I started thinking, what if the noises in the vents weren't animals? I wish I could say I immediately called the landlord, or the cops, or a priest, anyone, but trauma makes you second guess everything. After the Airbnb incident, I became obsessed with not being the crazy one. I didn't want to be the girl who screamed over pipes and shadows. So I documented things quietly. I wrote timestamps in a notebook. I marked food levels with Sharpie lines. I set my phone to record audio at night. A therapist once told me, if you think you're imagining it, collect proof. So I did. Night after night, the recordings picked up something I couldn't deny: breathing. Not vacuous breathing. Human breathing. Sometimes slow. Sometimes shaky. Sometimes so close to the vent that you could hear moisture in the exhale. One night, I kid you not, I heard a whisper. Just a single, shaky word. Hello? I remember sitting up in bed so fast I got dizzy. I didn't respond, obviously. I froze. I held my breath until the room felt like it was closing in. That was the moment when fear became certainty. There was someone living inside the ventilation system. And they knew I was there. Over the next week, the noises got bolder. Scratching metal. Shuffling. Soft little giggles that made my skin crawl. I started hearing it during the day too, not just at night. And then came the worst part. One morning, I walked into the kitchen and every cabinet door was open. Every single one. Not violently opened, just open. Like someone had been looking through them and didn't bother to close anything. The front door was still locked from the inside. Windows still latched. Nothing broken. That meant the person was already inside. That meant they had access from somewhere other than the doors. That meant the vents. I didn't sleep for 36 hours after that. Fear changes how you move through space. I stopped walking normally. I crept. I held my breath when passing vents. I closed the bathroom door silently like I was hiding from a hunter. And then, one afternoon, I heard something I'll never forget. Singing. A woman's voice. Soft, off-key, like humming to herself. The sound was coming from the vent above the kitchen doorway. That was the moment I stopped doubting myself forever. I grabbed a chair, climbed up, and put my ear directly to the grate. She was right there. On the other side. Breathing. Still singing. I didn't scream. I didn't move. I didn't even blink. I just stayed there, frozen, listening. Then, and I swear to God this is real, I heard her whisper. I like your shampoo. I jumped off the chair and fell. My hands were shaking so violently I couldn't dial my phone. I called my brother, not 911, because trauma logic says, call someone who believes you, not someone who thinks you're crazy. He picked up immediately and I said, she's in the vents. There's a woman in the vents. I think she comes out at night. He didn't question me. He just said he was on his way. While I waited, I locked myself in the bathroom and watched the vent above the sink. That was when I saw her. Fingers first, pale and thin, slipping through the slats like spider legs. Then an eye. Wide, unblinking, watching me. She didn't look homeless. She looked intentional. Clean hair. Calm expression. Like she'd been living there comfortably. And then she smiled. A slow, knowing smile, like I was the intruder. I didn't scream. I just backed into the bathtub and curled into myself like a child. When my brother arrived, he pounded on the door and I ran out. He searched every room, every closet, every inch of the apartment. No woman. But the attic access panel, the one I never used, was open. Inside were blankets. Bottles. Food wrappers. My missing things. A nail file, sharpened into a weapon. And a notebook. A notebook filled with notes about me. What time I showered. What time I slept. What I ate. What I watched on TV. How often I checked the locks. How often I cried. On the last page. She's starting to hear me. Might need to move sooner. Police were called. They did a full search of the duct system and confirmed what I already knew: someone had been living in the walls for weeks. Maybe months. They never found her. Not a single trace after that day. I don't live in apartments anymore. I don't sleep without checking vents. I don't shower unless I can see every wall at once. I don't leave food unsealed. I don't ignore weird sounds, ever. I learned this the hard way. Some people don't break into your home. They are already inside it. To this day, I still don't know how long she watched me before I noticed. Or how many nights she was inches away from my face while I slept. Or if she ever crawled out while I was unconscious. Sometimes, late at night, when the heater turns on, I still flinch. Because breathing through metal has a sound you never forget. And to the woman who lived in my vents. Let's not meet. Story 4, the boyfriend who killed his great-grandmother with a hammer. I used to think I was a good judge of character. I used to believe that evil had a certain look, that you could see it in someone's eyes, or hear it in the way they laughed, or sense it the moment they stepped into a room. Then I met Caleb. Caleb was my best friend Anna's boyfriend. She was 19, I was 20, and we were just starting that era of young adulthood where you pretend you're mature but still cry over expired ramen. She was the kind of girl who fell in love in 3 days and started planning the wedding on day 4. Her whole personality was the kind of chaotic optimism that makes shy people feel alive just by standing next to her. Then she met Caleb at a gas station, because of course she did. He worked at the counter, she bought chips, he told her she had eyes like thunder, and she decided fate existed. By the end of the week, he was picking her up in his beat-up grey truck and driving her to his house, a place that would eventually ruin her in ways she still doesn't talk about. He didn't live alone. He lived with his great-grandmother. That was the first weird thing. Not a grandmother. Not a mom. A great-grandmother. 90-something. Still alive. Still walking, somehow. And strict. Very strict. The house was old. Wooden. The kind with wallpaper that had been yellowed by time and television static. Every room smelled like menthol and dust, like a nursing home left in the sun. But Anna said she liked it because it feels vintage. That was her word for everything old, vintage. Vintage sweaters, vintage mugs, vintage trauma bonds. Caleb wasn't immediately creepy. He was quiet, maybe a little emotionally flat, but introverts exist. He talked slow, like he was thinking through every word before placing it on the table. He never laughed loudly. Never raised his voice. Everything about him was mild. Too mild. When someone has no emotional edges at all, something in you should start whispering. Mine did. Hers didn't. The second red flag was the basement. No one was allowed down there. Not Anna. Not me. Not even the cat that lived there. And every time she asked why, Caleb would give the same answer. It's just storage. But he said it too quickly. Too reflexively. Like the line was rehearsed. Once, Anna tried to go down there when he was in the shower. She didn't even make it halfway before he came running down the hallway dripping wet, yanking her back by the arm with a force she did not expect. He apologized afterward. Said it was dangerous. Said there were tools and traps and chemicals. But the marks on her arm said something else. She told me that like she was telling me gossip. Can you believe he got so protective? He just cares a lot. That was the third red flag. She thought violence meant love. I was there the night it happened. Not when he killed her, that came later, but I was there for the night before. The night that now feels like the prelude to a massacre. It was a Friday. Anna invited me over because Caleb's in a good mood, and apparently that was a rare meteorological event. We ordered pizza, sat around the dusty living room, and played card games on a coffee table covered in cigarette burns. His great-grandmother was upstairs, asleep. Or so we thought. Caleb was normal. Not charming, not funny, but normal. He made eye contact. He even smiled at one point. Anna looked so proud, like she had fixed him. Like she had single-handedly healed the world's quietest boy. At one point, she excused herself to the bathroom, and that's when the air changed. I don't mean that poetically. I mean I watched the life drain from his face like someone switched him off. He stopped moving. Stopped blinking. Just stared at the table. Then he said, very softly, "Do you ever think about how easy it is to break a skull?" I thought he was joking. I laughed. He didn't. He picked up one of the heavy glass salt shakers, turned it in his hand like he was testing its balance, and said, "The trick isn't force. It's angle." I should have left. I should have walked out of that house right then and there. But I told myself what every woman has been taught to tell herself. Don't overreact. Don't be dramatic. It's just weird, not dangerous. I excused myself and went to stand in the hallway. I texted Anna. "I don't like being alone with him when you're not here." She texted back. "He's just socially awkward, don't make it weird." So I went back in, and we played cards like nothing had happened. That night, when I left, Caleb hugged me goodbye. He'd never hugged me before. He whispered against my hair, "See you soon." I didn't think anything of it at the time. Now it makes my stomach turn. The call came the next morning. 7:41 a.m. Anna's voice was shaking so badly she could barely say the words. "He killed her." "What? Who?" "His great-grandmother. With a hammer. In her sleep. The police found her in her bed. Blunt force trauma. No signs of struggle. They found the hammer still on the floor. They found Caleb sitting at the kitchen table eating cereal. He didn't run. He didn't cry. He didn't deny anything. When they asked him why, he said, "She was going to die anyway. I just chose the day." When they asked if he felt anything, he said, "No. But I thought I would." When they asked if he had ever hurt anyone else, he said, "Not yet." Anna was in shock. She'd slept through the whole thing. The cops found blood on her socks from walking down the hallway in the morning. She didn't even notice. She called me from the police station, and all she kept saying was, "I was right there. I was right there. I was in the next room." And then, he hugged you goodbye. He knew what he was going to do. She was right. He knew. Anna didn't date for 2 years after that. Didn't sleep without the lights on for even longer. She sees a therapist now. She flinches at the sound of metal hitting wood. She hates the smell of cereal. She won't go near houses with basements. As for Caleb, he never apologized. Not to her. Not to the family. Not to anyone. When the judge asked if he regretted it, he said, "I regret not knowing what it would feel like before I did it. That's all." He is serving life without parole. I don't think about him often, but sometimes, when I meet quiet men, the ones who study you silently, who never raise their voices, who seem harmless because they are still, I remember this. Monsters don't always foam at the mouth. Sometimes they sit beside you, shuffling cards, waiting to decide what kind of person they are. And to the boy who practiced murder in the basement long before the hammer ever swung, let's not meet.